there's something in the music that simply grabs people by the balls and pulls them on the dance floor, and you know, you wanna get lost. Back then it was like real subculture, and it was for people who try to get away from everything else that was happening. So
it was in the mid-90s, I think?
No, that was even in the late 80s. That was in the late 80s. And in the 90s, it really opened up in 91 when I started DJing. That wasn't the reason that it opened up, but it was good to be a part of the whole movement really taking off. But yeah, in the 90s, early 90s, 91, 92, with the techno coming in, a lot of the Belgium techno later on, and I think even already at this time, and then Italy also like getting into this kind of sound, and all the big summer locations. Ibiza was playing this kind of stuff since I think in '89, starting with the Acids thing or something. And then from there it grew and grew and grew, and it attracted way more people, and finally I would see people on parties that I would play my tapes to that would say that this is not even music, why you listen to this kind of stuff. I'm like, no, this is great, you know, like trying to promote it to people. I'm a quite enthusiastic person. If I like something, then I try to make everyone feel the same about it, which doesn't always work, but you know, at least you're trying. And yeah, finally these people with techno, suddenly a lot of them got into it because it was in the press everywhere, and techno was a new thing, and so like suddenly it was like a more kind of a normal thing to go to these kind of parties. Also the first big rave parties happened, and so it attracted more and more people starting in the 90s. Yeah.
And when did Steve Buck when was Steve Buck born, actually, as an artist? You felt like now my career is starting, and how did it develop?
Yeah, I in '91, after I spent 3 months in Ibiza, I decided to finally throw some parties in my hometown with a good friend of mine who used to bartend at the club. We threw the parties. We had the feeling that there was something missing in our hometown, like some crazy party vibes that we felt in Ibiza. Back in the days, it was more like motto parties where people would dress up after a certain motto, which was great. Theme parties, that's the English word. And at the time we thought it was a great thing to do, and nothing like this ever happened in our hometown. And so we started doing these parties, and I thought, well, if we start throwing parties, I should maybe just DJ as well. And the other DJ we invited always for our parties was Jens Malmsted, who was one of the DJs at the club at the time, doing the Friday night mixed black music with house music and acid jazz, whatever, like this very various sounds and various speeds. And asking him to play only like house and techno for this night, and he joined. And so these parties, after 4 or 5 parties, the owner of the club saw that it was really taking off, and it was something, and he really liked how I was playing. So he offered me a Friday night at the club with Jens together. So we took over the Friday night, and from there, it all started. You're making connections with other people, with other clubs. You invite people, even though it wasn't really common at the time, but you start to invite people from other clubs because you know them from clubbing, and you know they were DJs and they throw in parties and they invite you to their club. And so I had a lot of friends in Munich that I met in Ibiza. They started throwing parties as well at the same year that we did. So they invited me. I've been playing a lot in Munich already in the 92, I think it was. A lot of people were doing parties there. And then I also wanted to figure out how this music is produced. It was funny that it took so long, because I was already mixing tapes at home and never really thought of. But then I was like, I finally knew some people that were making this music as well. I said, yeah, can you invite me to the studio? I want to see how it's done, you know. And so with a friend from Hamburg who was DJ at the club. He was a co-DJ with my label partner these days, Tobias Lampe. It was Henry Stammer Johann. He was releasing as Fax PHAX on Superstition Records, and he also had some stuff on Hard House, Sven's label at the time. And so we produced the first EP together, and it was coming out as Fax featuring Steve Buck. And then I started working with other people. The Goldfinger EP was Gerrit Freris from U-Mate, and then it was Oliver Huntemann. I did some tracks as Cabana, I think. I don't remember exactly the project name. And with Pik Hjomberg, the third guy at the beginning. U-Mate were 3 guys, and Pik Hjomberg, we did Clever and Smart together. And then I figured quite quickly after this, I think it was even before starting with all the people, that I wanted to also work on my own tracks. I don't wanted anyone to influence what I was trying to do, and also to figure it out by myself.
You started producing in the studio you were, or you?
No, I figured that if there's someone else in the studio, it's not going to be the same. So I finally quit my normal job because of this new club owner in Bremen, where I was still DJing. He kind of offered more money, and then the club closed down for 1 month, and he had all these weird ideas of changing it, and after 1 month it reopened. It was just painted a different color, so they could have done in 1 week. But another club that was open at the time took a lot of people. So I finally moved to Hamburg to work at Superstition office. I was doing bookings for a while, and I was talking to the bank to give me a credit to buy some equipment. My mother stepped in to insure the credit. So at the time, I mean, you had to spend a lot of money. You needed a mixer, keyboard, sampler, all this kind of stuff. I think nowadays, pretty much everyone has a computer, and you just need some software, and a lot of people start with cracked software.
What did you buy? Equipment? You remember?
I remember exactly. The first thing I bought was a JD 880 Roland keyboard, and actually I produced the first 2 EPs only with this synth and mixer, because it also had 808 and 99 drum sets included as samples. Not really sounding that great, but it was, for me, it was the first thing that I had, and I could finally do something. And I just enjoyed playing around and making some weird tracks. And I brought the tapes to the office, and my nowadays labor partner Tobias, he was like, after 2 days, he kept the tape, and he was saying like, we would love to release these tracks. I'm like, holy crap, this is my first tracks, are you sure? Because I don't know, I didn't really feel like 100% confident about them, because I mean, it was the first stuff I've ever done by myself. But he saw something in me, so these tracks came out, and then I bought a Akai S950 sampler used by some guy in Hamburg, and my major problem at the time was I was mixing with hi-fi speakers, and I had a small room, no soundproofments, nothing. Maybe slightly bigger than this room, with my bed, like all my stuff, the records and the gear. And sometimes I couldn't even pay the rent for this room. So I got some help from my mom, but also like my roommate. She was making a lot of money. She didn't really care that I had to pay on time, but. Because I quit the job at Superstition office to make more music. I figured that I needed more time to concentrate on making music, and to get more into it and find out more about like how to make it and stuff. But the speakers that definitely didn't do a good job for me, because a lot of the tracks sound very thin in the bass drum. They sound more like rim shots. So if I would recommend anything to anyone starting to produce today, either get like a very good headphone and get used to it and try to do it on the headphones, or like get some proper speakers. I think it's probably more important than getting like some hardware these days.
And where did you get your advice to make your productions better? You think was the label helped you out, or?
No, I think, I mean, it was learning by doing, but also being in the studio with other people that really helped, like looking over their shoulder, or you know, like you speaking to each other. But in general, it was learning by doing. I mean, I think I've always been good in that. If I'm interested in something, then I'm really trying to find out everything about it, and making use of this stuff that I bought. I never read like a manual. I just try to figure everything out by myself. I might have missed a lot of things over the years, but I always made a use out of the gear that I had, and I think the only thing I ever needed help for was when I bought an EMU sampler, because it was working completely different than the Akai sampler before, and I didn't quite get it, and I didn't really get the menu as well. I did look into it, but it didn't really help, so I just closed it. And I had a friend come over and explain me, and by working together with him, it was just like bam, and then I got the rest by myself.
And did your sound really change over the last 20 years, or you can also still connect to your early productions?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is definitely connectable for me, like the harmonies and stuff like that, and also the repetitiveness. I don't know if it's the word, but of course the sound is something that I figured in the beginning wasn't really good, and I'm not like 100% satisfied about, and I would love this would have been different if I had known better at the time, but there was no information, no internet, no videos you could look at to find out what you should do different. So you just had to figure out yourself. And then when the release comes out and you play it out in the club, then you finally see, oh my God, this sounds like this, or the kick drum is too thin, or you didn't really notice before. Because I mean, nowadays you burn a track to a stick, or you put it on your computer and you play it out, or before on a CD, but at the time it was just turntables. So like how you were supposed to, you could make a dub plate, but they cost a lot of money.
So the decision to press a vinyl was more difficult, of course, than the decision to digitalize a track, but was the quality needed to be better back in the days to say, okay, this track we're gonna press on vinyl than now, you think, or is it?
No, I think since there was less music, I mean, if you look at the history of house music, there's a lot of tracks that sound like crap, and they've been played a lot. And also the sound systems back in the days, they haven't been as good. It's especially when you look at clubs like Berlin, there have been a lot of cellar clubs where people just broke into and they set up a sound system with a generator outside, because Berlin was lawless after the wall came down, because the police just couldn't control the whole city. They lost half of the police because of the east part. And the sound system were just terrible, and they had a strobe light, but everyone just enjoyed it, and it was a banging mid-range sound system with no real sub-bass or anything, so it didn't really matter if the track sounded perfect or not. Like today you have all this high-end sound system in most of the clubs, and of course nowadays the track has to sound much better than it had to back in the days, also because of the amount of music that today is out there every week, every day.
Were you part of the movement after the wall fell down? Or,
I think I was in Berlin I was playing at the first, no, it wasn't the first. I played at the Love Parade in '92 when they were doing like some things in some hangar stuff. My DJ partner Jens brought me over. He had good connections with the Low Spirit guys because he used to live in Berlin, and that's where he started DJing actually. And yeah, but I've been to Mayday, I think in '91 or '92. I'm not exactly sure which year, and the year after. and to plan it. And I met people from there, and then later on I even played in these places. But that was a little bit later, not the exact beginning. Yeah. But I played a lot at Tresor, and also like a Planet, which later turned into eWork, and yeah, it was an exciting time, because still, like, it was kind of a taking off vibe, you know, like something, a lot of creative people putting their energy into it, and they simply loved. In Berlin at this time, it was really taken off after 91, 92. The energy was just incredible. It's really hard to describe. It's like it's been like a lot of creative heads in one club, and not many other people, because they didn't understand yet.
And the possibility to express themselves.
Exactly, yeah. Like to totally, yeah, to express yourself, to go out, to let yourself go, and to lose yourself also, to just enjoy yourself and not having to hold up for something, just, you know, just going for it.
The music and the whole political situation collided in a way that people could.
Yeah,
that's great. I have some more student-wise questions.
Yeah.
To maybe round up this interview in some minutes, because you have to play. Yeah, about running a label.
Yeah.
It's also interesting, of course. When you started the label, how did it happen, and what do you think are the most important things you need to know, or pitfalls you?
Yeah, that's what I'm. But I have to. There's a pre-story. Yeah. So when I was releasing records on Superstition, that was the first label I was releasing records to. After a while, I felt like my sound is not really suitable to this label, and I talked to the owner, and I said, "Look, I don't think my music is quite suitable to this label anymore. I think I'm going to send my tracks to other people, but I'm quite a loyal person, so I talked to him instead of just sending it to other people." And he recommended maybe we should think about founding an own label together. And I had a thought, and I was like, yeah, maybe that's an idea, also to surround myself with artists that I respect, that I feel, or help them to develop a career. And yeah, after I had another thought, I really enjoyed the idea, and we started founding Raw Elements at the time. And so yeah, there was the first label I've started with my partner in '96, and then we did it for almost 3 years, vinyl only at the time, of course, because there was nothing else. We did some CDs. The albums have been released on CDs. But it was quite an experimental label, I would say, from the nowadays perspective. We kind of tried a lot of different styles, and it didn't really add up also with the distribution we had at the time. That didn't really get our sound. So at one point, I thought I have to change something, and we have to change the setup. And my partner didn't want to leave the distribution, because his main label Superstition was distributed to them as well. So I decided to start my first own label, Desu Recordings at the time, and I started with another distribution.
We have one hanging there.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, and the new distribution, which was Word and Sound, actually Container before, but then it started to grow into Word and Sound. They did perform so much better than everything else we ever released through the other distribution, and they really were behind our music. And so I went back to Tobias. I said, "Look, like, you know, it's possible. We can sell this kind of music." And he was like, "Yeah, okay, maybe you're right." And then we founded Poker Flat together. And after 10 releases, I also handed over Desu to him for the back office, because it was just too much. I have to say that running a label, being a DJ and trying to produce, it might be a good idea when you start it, but then, like, when all the when you have to make all the statements, and if you want to pay the artist, which I think it's something you should do. A lot of labels these days unfortunately don't. But it's something I always thought it's right, you know, like you have to do the statement to the artist, you have to pay him if there's money left, and so I handed over the back office because it was just I couldn't do it all by myself. It was especially if you license to compilations and then you have to chase them for the money, and this is like the times just add up and add up. I think it's really important to have someone who's taking care of this as a daily business, like full-time probably. In the beginning it could be like a half-time job, but then it has to grow as a full-time job. Otherwise, the only other solution is if you run a label with like 2 of your best friends, for example, and you only release your own music and all the money goes into the pot anyways, and it doesn't matter, and then you don't have to do any statements, and then it's fine. Then it's something you can do, and maybe also it's something very helpful to grow these days as a special like group of people with a certain sound, like with your friends growing, playing some DJ sets and something like this.
What was the mission vision of Poker Flat in that starting period?
I mean, with Desu, with Raw Elements, we've been quite we've been kind of not outgoing. We've been more like the typical Chicago kind of label, simple label, sticker, the artist name, and that's it. And with Poker Flat at the time, we tried to put more focus on the artist with the promotion and also with the artwork. So we did this Playboy kind of style magazine and cut out the hats and put them on top. Of course, already in the computer, not like basically literally cutting out the heads. But so it was like kind of a fun, making a fun kind of thing about like people putting their faces out finally in the techno scene. But we wanted to give it a little bit of a funny touch to it instead of just putting the hat and saying like it's us. It was so we kind of enjoyed it for quite some time. So the major idea was also musically. I think the idea is still the same, to release something that has, at least first of all, in general, it has to move me somehow, and for that it needs like a good groove. It needs some harmonies. I kind of like harmonies. I like a lot of minor stuff. Basically, Moog bass lines. It's very easy to get to the basics of Poker Flat sound. I think a lot of people forget that over the year. That's something I just love, and I think it's still like trying to combine modern sounds with like the old school house and techno vibes. This vibe that got me into the music. I think to me that's still the most important and driving part in my DJ sets, in record buying, in online music shopping, and as well as shopping music for the label or signing stuff for the label. There has to be this connection to me, and because personally I think if you look at the time that has been spent since the beginning, and then there's a lot of the old tracks that have the roots, and they may have developed a little bit, but if you have these roots, the basic of this music, it still works. It's never changed, and it's like a tree that grew into something, and you have all these leaves, and they sometimes just fall off, and then these leaves, they don't work anymore. But if something still has the root, then it's like it's still gonna work in 10 years, because this is why the music still exists, because there's something in the music that simply grabs people by the balls and pulls them on the dance floor, and you wanna get lost.
And when we look at the future, what do you think in 20 years? Will Pokerflat still exist? Will Steve Buck still be playing and around?
Yeah, if I think of the future and thinking if I'm gonna be around, that's something I can't really answer to myself. I mean, I think it's also it's about the people, if they still want to listen to what I'm playing. In general, I see it more. When I was younger, I thought when I'm 35, that's it. You know, I'm gonna do something else. Then with 30, I thought, okay, maybe with 40. And then I started with 45. Then you're thinking, what the hell? I can't do this forever. If people want to listen to what I'm doing, and if I still passionate for it, if I still have the passion for it, which I still do, then why not doing it until the end? And I think that's for most of the DJs. I think it's something that you can't really think of quitting. It's like I see it more as if you look at jazz musicians, they play in their cellar. I think there's kind of a similarity, even though people sit down mostly to jazz music. But these musicians, they could be like 80 something, and they still have the passion to play the music, and they still transport it to the public. And I think as long as you have this, you can do it. The only thing is that with how the business is these days, you're traveling so much that you probably have to step down from playing 8 to 20 gigs, whatever DJs play, to like play less gigs a month. But that's something, you know, I'm already decided. I've already decided a while ago that I don't want to play more than 8 to 10 gigs a month, unless it's like something special. But I rather concentrate on the weekend gigs than doing something during the week just to play more and more and more. And money was never the purpose for me of doing this. It's more basic enjoyment, enjoying myself and enjoying giving pleasure to people with the music. And but I can't do it if I do it more than a certain amount of gigs per month. I felt that if I play more than 3 shows a weekend, and that's only a very few times to do it, 3 times, then I think if you play too much, you kind of lose the ability to really connect with the people and with the music. It's becoming more like I don't want to say habit, but you just play. Maybe even almost the same set than you played the night before. Because it's to stay creative in your sets, you really have to connect with the people. And I figured a long time ago that I can't. If I play too many times per week, I simply can't connect with the people anymore, and then I'm not enjoying myself. And as I was saying, I'm doing this for also enjoying myself. That's the biggest part of it.
So you prepare also differently now than back in the days with your sets?
I mean, yeah, of course. Today, if you prepare a set today, you're going through your files on the desktop. I mean, I decided to play. I was one of the first German DJs to use back in the days Traktor Final Scratch, and I loved it from the beginning because I was always someone who tried to read the information from the record that you couldn't really get because you see where the break comes in, but then the needle in the dark, it's really difficult to really read. But my way of mixing is like if I want to put tracks together, sometimes I had to count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to make sure that I start the record at the right point, so the break comes in when this record does this, and then so like they all work together. And so with the additional information I had on the computer, and still being able to control the pitch and adjust the pitch with a vinyl, that was getting into me. That was what got me into playing with a laptop, and I'm still doing it. I think there's not many DJs left that still use vinyl to control the computer. A lot of the bigger DJs, even the other DJs, they went to controllers all over. The few that used tractor with CD players. They all pretty much went to CDs only. I mean, to USBs, which for me never was an option. I never got like warm with CD players. They feel like plastic, and it just, to me, they don't feel real. And it looks strange if you look at the DJ playing from a CD player. Then you have like this setup, you have the mixer and you have the CD players, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Nothing moves, it's all still. It's just like, it's the same with if you use controllers. Maybe even the lights do some blinking. Okay, that's the only thing that you can really see. It makes the looking at a DJ, to me personally, especially when you look at picture, like weird. It could be anything. It could be running a tape somewhere you don't see. With a record, you can really see that something is happening, and I think that's why a lot of DJs went back to playing vinyl, to also feel something instead of the plastic of a CD player, or to go through the records. It's also something. I did like a vinyl only set a while ago on a festival in the US, and I have to say I really enjoyed it, but I missed all the opportunities that I have when I use the computer to the add-on effects, and I would have to bring a lot of gear to make this happen. And since I'm traveling so much, I don't want to travel with like 100 records around the world. I would lose them so many times in connections. It happened to me before, and I know how it is, and I'm happy that there's a possibility to play different.
I have the last question, then you have to play also.
Yeah.
Advice to start a career for talents in this time, and maybe starting a label, because you're a 360 kind of person. So if you can say my advice for...
Yeah, if I would give an advice to someone starting a career these days, or maybe even starting a label, I think there's a lot of young DJs who start their career already with a pre-plan. They have a plan where they want to go. Whether it's like they started as a business, they have a management, they have everything behind their backs from the beginning, like a complete business plan. Personally, I think this might get you somewhere, but it might also burn you out quite fast because you don't have the time to adjust. I would always advise someone to slowly develop his own sound, and to take time to get better at what you're doing, at your DJ sets, at your productions, and see what's happening. And once you're on the edge of taking off, play some small gigs for a long time. I did it. We all did it. I mean, it really helps to understand the basics of DJing. I saw so many DJs blowing up very fast, and they couldn't handle playing for 3,000 people because they never played for 500 people before. So it's like, I think it's really important to go through these steps and to learn the basics by not making money in the first years, because it's definitely not going to happen because there's so many DJs out there. It's much harder these days than it was when I started, I have to admit. But still, I think the best way is to slowly take your time and get better at what you're doing. Maybe hook up with some friends that do the same or similar thing and create your own kind of sound. Maybe start throwing parties together and start growing from there together. It's always better, I think, these days if you start as a community. And then in that case, as I mentioned before, starting a label with these mates together, it could move something. If you start something by yourself, signing like big names, that's what a lot of labels do. Someone starts a new label, they sign big names because they have money or they throw money on it. But they're never going to have a profile because they just sign the artists who are just big right now, and it doesn't lead to anything. My personal opinion. But if you start something with your friends and you have an idea, a vision, and then you start this vision with your friends, and you finally bring it out to the market, and and people finally start to discover it, and then it's like then slowly it's a snowball system. It's gonna start. It's gonna start. The media is hungry for new stuff. I think it's more difficult to constantly stay on top. It's easier to start something and become popular because the media is always looking what's next. So if you come up with something that's special, you're gonna have a big chance to succeed and to make it to the next level, and from there, then maybe start thinking of a management or like a press agent or whatever. But before, I think you could do it by yourself and wait for the moment.
Is Giegling an example, because they started as a small community and their label the first 5 years nobody noticed them, the label.
Yeah.
And then suddenly their sound got...
Yeah, that's the thing. It's definitely there is a if there's a history already at the time when people really discover you, then it's like, oh my God, these have been out for like 5 years, 4 years. So it's a different thing than just there's 1-2 new records and they're already trying to push it as much as possible. It's like people discovering. I think not only about the press. Also, I think there's a lot of DJs or even fans out there. They want to discover something. They don't want to have it put in their face all the time, like on the social media. It's like you feel like what is? Yeah, I don't want to check this. It's too much in my face. So like they're still people. They want to discover, and they have the same. They have the same kind of thing that they want to tell others about it, and then it's mouth by mouth promotion, and I think this is still the best way to do it. It always was, and it's definitely better for a long lasting career than just trying with a business plan.